It's funny how you can live with someone for years, share a bed, a last name, memories, even pain, and still not really know the corners of their soul until something extraordinary, something completely unexpected, unfolds right before your eyes. I'd always thought I understood my husband, Daniel, completely. His favorite coffee, black, no sugar. The way he preferred silence over small talk. The softness in his voice when he talked about his late mother. The way he touched my back when he passed me in the kitchen. But I realized one quiet Sunday morning that perhaps I had only scratched the surface of the ocean that was his heart. And it all began when I woke up to find a sealed letter on the breakfast table with a small, neat posted note that simply said, "Read this somewhere quiet." It wasn't our anniversary, not my birthday, not anything remarkable, just an ordinary Sunday, and yet something about the folded cream paper, the weight of it, made my fingers tremble as I picked it up. Curiosity mixed with strange tightness in my chest, and I slipped outside onto the porch, coffee in one hand, the letter in the other, as the golden morning light filtered through the leaves, warm in my skin with deceptive sense of calm. Because the moment I unfolded the letter and saw the familiar curve of his handwriting, everything inside me stilled. My beloved Sophie, it began, my breath caught, because he hadn't called me Sophie in a letter, since we were young and wildly in love, before life dulled the edges of our passion with bills and responsibilities, before we lost our second child and stopped talking about hope the way we used to, before his late nights at work grew longer and my loneliness more familiar, and I read on as he poured his heart onto the page, recounting the first time he saw me in the university library, tucked between the psychology shelves, humming under your breath, and how he knew even then, with a young man's certainty, that I was going to ruin him in the best possible way. How he'd watch me walk past the campus cafe just to catch a glimpse of the sunlight on my hair. How he used to write letters to me in his journal he never had the courage to send until I said yes to our first date. And how, over the years, he had failed in so many small ways to show me that he still adored me just as fiercely, that even when I felt invisible to the world, to him, I was still the girl who made him forget to breathe. The letter detailed memories I had forgotten, like how I danced barefoot in the rain during our honeymoon in Florence, how I cried after my first failed attempt at baking a cake, and he'd eaten every charred bite with a smile, and how I'd fallen asleep on his chest every night for the first 6 months of our marriage because I didn't yet trust the silence of the dark without his heartbeat nearby. But it wasn't just a love letter. It was a confession, too, a raw unraveling of all the moments he wished he'd spoken up, reached. For me, said sorry faster, listened better. How the distance that crept into our marriage wasn't born from the absence of love, but from a foolish belief that there would always be more fixed things. And now that he was facing a diagnosis, I gave him perhaps a year. Two, if he was lucky. He wanted me to know, really know, how much I mattered, not in some abstract poetic way, but in the real, tangible moments that made up our life together. The mornings I brought him coffee without a word. The nights I held him when the nightmares returned. The way I sang off-key during road trips and made him laugh so hard he had to pull over. The letters I used to write him on sticky notes and hide in his briefcase before important meetings. My vision blurred as the words sank in, each sentence cutting deep in the last. He had known for weeks, had gone to appointments alone, had carried this burden in silence because he did want to steal whatever peace we still had left. But the letter wasn't full of fear. It was full of love and gratitude, of a man who had come to peace with his fate, but couldn't leave without making sure I heard the words he struggled to say out loud. You were never just enough. You were everything, he wrote, and I could almost hear his voice, soft and steady, as if he were sitting beside me, holding my hand. And by the time I finished the letter, the sun was high and my coffee cold, and I was crying a way I hadn't cried in years, not just because of the news, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt seen, deeply, achingly seen, and when I walked back inside, he was there, standing in the kitchen, watching me with those eyes that always felt too old for his face. And without a word, I crossed the room and held him, not like a wife clinging to what was being taken from her, but like a woman who had just found the other half of her heart again. And from that day forward, we lived differently, more slowly, more deliberately, taking joy in the little things like watching the rain, making silly faces at each other over burnt toast, dancing to our wedding song in the living room with the lights off and socks on, laughing until hurt. And though his health declined over time, and though there were hospital visits and days when he couldn't find the strength to speak, He never stopped writing. Every day, a note, a sentence. A. Memory, tucked into drawers, placed on my pillow, hidden in my favorite books. And when he passed quietly in his sleep, I found one final letter, dated the day before, and it simply said, "If love is the only legacy we leave behind, then I've lived a life worth living, because I gotta love you." And I realized in that being left speechless wasn't always a sign of shock or sadness. It could also be the overwhelming, breathtaking silence that fills you when someone loves you so deeply that no words will ever be enough to hold it all.